right, I'm really excited for today's episode of Scaling Through Structure. I've got Sean Longadoc. Did I get that right? Did I do it?
You got it. You got it.
Practice makes perfect. I'm so excited to talk about your journey today. So thanks for being on the show, Sean.
My pleasure, Austin. Great to be here.
All right, before we got started, you were talking about how you built 4 different companies. So I'm excited to hear your past story and where you're at now. So why don't we just kind of start? Tell me a little bit about the past career and where we are now in this new exciting venture that you have.
Yeah, that's four companies in tech. Others were not tech, but yeah. And I like to say, I'm from Canada, so I like to say they all went south. 2 of them went to the States. So I've got wins and losses. And every time I built a company, I'd have an issue with, growing the company's engineering capacity at scale, at a speed that was either based on what investors wanted us to do or what a client wanted us to do to build an interface, whatever the case is. And I always found it was the opposite problem of when I was hiring engineers, which is a slow process. Most good engineers are already booked out. When I decided I looked to outsourcing for some project or some aspects of what we're building, it was always the opposite problem. There's just way too many choices and there's no filter. There's no trust in the market. And so you kind of go to your friends and you talk about your process, this is what you're looking for. Really, there is no process that we generally have when we're growing a company for outsourcing. It's very unlike hiring engineers where you try and build a process. And so, so I decided to build a company that solves that problem.
All right. Well, tell me a little bit about that company and how you're solving how you're solving that problem.
Well, it's it first starts off with the problem that you have when you're looking is you don't have a lot of time. You're building a company or you're saddled onto your head of engineering and they're trying to build, to the next sprint. They don't have a lot of time to be looking around and interviewing and doing due diligence on all these companies. So without a lot of time, you don't have a lot of data. And without a lot of data, you can't make a really good decision. So like I said, the first fast track is to go talk to your friends or people who've had a good experience. But that's, that might get you a couple good hits, but good companies, guess what? They've also booked out their best engineers so that you might run dry running down that alley. And it might not have any of the domain expertise that you're looking for. So most people's next step in the process is to look online, look at Google or pick a country. If you wanted to pick a country for a hockey team, let's say, you'd probably want to pick Canada as one of them. And you could just throw a dart in the country and hope you got lucky. Well, guess what? We have lots of people who never played hockey, including, I played hockey as a kid, but not like you have to build a hockey team. I'm a skier. So you go to throw a dart in a country like Brazil or Argentina or Ukraine or whatever. Well, don't throw any more darts at Ukraine. I think there's a lot of that going on already, but there's 1,600 companies in Ukraine alone, right? Mm-hmm. So where do you start? And so you might get lucky, you might not. And that's the problem. So there's no process, no data. And we basically we spent a lot of years researching who's good at what. They'll all tell you they can do everything. You look at their websites, health tech, fintech, ed tech, whatever. And so we do a really reverse engineering process of how to make them the appropriate match for our clients. And it's a pretty interesting process.
And so you built a whole learning language model to be able to be a matchmaker for these different engineering teams across the world for tech companies that need more engineers. Is that right?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a learning language model. It's really a matching model and use key data points to match. And some of those are soft tissue items like, real cultural fit. Like, in some parts of the world, people are very hierarchical. So they're used to being told what to do. And you get into an environment where you're supposed to tell the boss what to do and they're not used to challenging the boss or speaking up. You're going to get a lot of people saying yes, 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 and nothing ever getting done. Right? So just those kinds of things are part of the process, which are somewhat unique to how we filter out who's good at what. But the most important are the two table stakes, I would say, are, obviously you want people to understand the tech stack and be senior engineers. But the second thing you want is them to understand your business, right? Like if you're in logistics marketplace, you're in a marketplace for logistics, for example, on B2B, you want people to understand the logistics business because there's rules and there's ways of doing things so that when they're building product for you, they know the user's logic and their workflow, and they can build much better and faster. So, or if you're in health tech or fintech, there's regulations you got to know. You got to work with those regulations and know the constraints. So things like that. Those are just the basic table stakes.
Okay. So at Outforce, how do you structure the relationships? You have this database of all the engineers, and then the end user, I assume, as the tech company, and they pay you to be a part of the service?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We actually don't take anything from any of and we're B2B. So if you want just a gig worker, there's lots of Fiverr, Upwork, those kinds of things. But if you want, to assemble a bit of a team and you're not looking for, Deloitte or Capgemini or any of the big things, then right in the middle there, that's where our sweet spot is. And so, you engage with us. We take a markup on the percentage, a percentage markup on the pay rate to the agency that you choose. And we end up having a really good negotiating position with that agency, sometimes better than our own client, because, they might start with 3 or 5. And, for some agencies, that's not enough to be very excited. But they look at us like, oh, man, right now, all those agencies are just white noise in everybody's inbox. No, there's no differentiation, right? So finally, somebody's matching to what they're actually good at, getting them good clients for a win-win relationship. That's interesting for them. So we, put a lot of pressure on them, do a good job, work well with our client on pricing, and away we go.
Awesome. So is it kind of a double-edged sword? Obviously, you need the lead generation of the clients coming in, and then are you continuing to recruit and get more these dev teams in your database, or do you feel like you have enough now that you can solve almost any problem? Talk to me about that relationship.
Yeah. So that's usually on a marketplace, you have a demand or a supply focus. Supply, obviously, in outsourcing, not a problem getting supply, right? However, some agencies are really boutiques, and they're very specific about who they want to work with, and they might not be akin to getting on a platform like ours. And it took some convincing, right? And so that's the kind of thing that we work well with is really helping them understand that the matching is really good for their business, because if they're, like I said, if they're just very specific niche and it's very specific tech stack, their world is pretty limited unless they work with us. And that works out really, really well.
Okay. And speaking of tech stack, how do you organize that side of the business? What are some of the tools that you guys lean on to maximize your operation?
Well, in terms of our own tech stack, it's not as important as the tech stack of the client is. And so that's the other, besides business domain, it's what are their must-haves in a tech stack, and then what other tools are they using that are nice to have. So there's little or no onboarding required, and that's where it gets kind of unique. Like we had a customer that was a bank, and a new bank, like it was called a Basco, banking as a service company. So they were trying to build infrastructure underneath. They were sponsored by a big bank and sponsored by Google to get started. So they had a requirement to have senior DevOps with like 15 years of experience, at least 5 of it being in the banking side. And they had to have at least 3 years of Golang experience. So, Google's Golang. I mean, that's a pretty rare breed to get those 3 things. And their head of engineering kind of said, look, hey, I used to be the head of Accenture's global partnerships. I know how to do this. I don't need you guys. No problem. We let him go. 2 months later, he comes back and says, I know a lot of people, but they're not the right ones. And within 2 weeks, we had 7 companies that had built multiple Bascos in Golang, and some of them had teams that are just coming off a major project. So they'd all worked together in their domain. They'd built 4 Bascos, so they knew product more than my client, who might have been building his first. And boy, did they hit the ground running. I mean, they just knocked it out of the park. So that's the kind of needle in the haystack stuff we can do too.
Wow. So when you're interviewing somebody on the supply side, right? Yeah, one of these engineering teams, without giving away the secret sauce, how many data points are you chasing after in terms of understanding their capabilities, expertise, and where they're able to thrive?
Austin, I am happy to give away this sauce. I don't care if anybody uses your service or not. It is such a waste of time talking to agencies that are a waste of time. And that's all I'm trying to prevent. So I'm actually going to publish a video series and a book on the ultimate guide to outsourcing for engineering and data science, because it's so needed. People make so many fundamental mistakes. Like the first one you make is, once you found an agency that you kind of think might work, guess who you talk to? You're the leader of the company. You're the leader of engineering. Well, of course, you talk to their leader in engineering. And guess what they do all day long? They answer questions about how they work and all those things. So they give you the perfect answers. They are so trained at that you just feel, wow, this is awesome. I'm ready to go. You haven't met any of the engineers that are actually going to work on your project. And so that's the other fundamental thing we do in our process is we send it out to 100 agencies that are a perfect fit technically and in domain expertise for our client. But we want to know who they've got available at the time we're asking. And we interview from the bottom up. And that's a killer of time, because most people don't have that time. That's where our AI comes in. We have a process of looking at resumes and actually normalizing the data on resumes, QAing it so that, you get a resume that somebody says 15 years experience, and they also say Golang. Well, Golang hasn't been around for 15 years, right? So there's a mix. And so it QAs to know exactly how many years of Golang they've had versus how many years of experience total in it as an engineer. Those kinds of things. And then we provide a data analytical view. We call it a Moneyball report at each of the agencies that have been shortlisted, so you can quickly decide the few companies that you want to interview. But yeah, asking questions about how they work is important, but you want to ask those after you know who's available. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. That's just
I haven't interviewed nearly as many of these organizations as you have, but one thing that I've found to be quite, let's say, not as fun in the process is what I call the time zone fallacy.
Yeah.
Where, man, everybody in the interview process really, we work on your time zone.
Sure.
And then we start working together, and it just doesn't seem like anybody's around about 3-4 o'clock my time at the end of the day. So I asked that because you mentioned that there's some trust issues between the head engineer who's again selling everything, and then the actual engineering team. So what do you do on your side to make sure that whatever is being said in that interview process, when you do match them with a client, that there's follow through?
Yeah, well, number one, if you are going to work with a company on a very different time zone, you can't expect them to work on your time zone. They just won't be able to recruit good engineers to work those times. So you have to face the facts. Either you're going to work on a halo, and how many hours of halo do you want, right? For something that's 12 hours away, that's a very short window, right? So if you want them at every stand-up, or if you want them at all the sprints and all of them there, you're going to get a compromised team generally. If you're willing to work asynchronously entirely, then working in Southeast Asia, no problem. Generally, our clients pick time zones that are a maximum of 4 hours halo. So Eastern Europe to South America. And then those that have worked asynchronously on a regular basis, where they have people in that part of the world, they can work that time zone. So you got to be realistic, because you think about the engineering firm and how hard it is to keep somebody good who's working the midnight shift, and they've got family. Because if it's a senior engineer, they're going to have family too, and they're not going to be wanting to do the night shift. They're going to want to do the day shift. And so those are things you got to be realistic about. The second thing is, I like to ask questions and poke holes in the answer. So another secret sauce is I'll ask, typically I'll ask, so, you're telling me all these great things about your experiences with customers. Tell me when things went really south. Like every project has hiccups. Tell me about something that went really bad. And I'll look for the answer, and I'll look for the body language around the answer as much as the answer itself. And then if the answer is good and the body language is good, the next thing I say is, hey, you know what? I'm going to be doing due diligence on your company. So obviously I'm going to be asking that client what they had in that same experience. Are they going to tell me exactly the same thing? And then I look for the body language around that. And that could be like something like, hey, you say you can work all these hours. What's your client experience been? And you look for that double question and make sure they know you're going to the client. If they hesitate or anything, it's BS.
Nice. So having so much experience with other companies, you said 4 tech companies. What type of companies did you run before tech companies?
One was data migration. I built what I would describe as a Rosetta Stone between large media companies and large advertising agencies in the television space for contracts. Another one was actually from that, one of my directors asked me to help out a company that was in advanced material science and quantum physics, 2 subjects that I'm terrible at, but I'm a really good go-to-market guy. So that worked out well. And then I went back into digital media with a company that was in the contest and sweepstakes space. I took over as CEO, and really going back to your point about go-to-market and structure and everything, systems around that. I'm really a channel sales kind of person. I don't believe in, I would never go to a B2C business. And so, unless it had really good channels. And so I put that into the I had the media and advertising agency experience. So I put that into that space. Same thing with that other advanced material science. And then the last one before this was I built a company called Payload, which basically was the Uber of oil field trucking.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it can expand into other kinds of trucking. But oil field is particularly hard because you got a lot of trucks going out with a load, coming back empty, or coming back for a load, going out with a load empty and back empty, or back full. So it optimizes trucking.
Okay. Well, I learned some cool things from you just there. One, your strength is go to market.
Yeah.
2, you really like channel sales.
Yeah.
So help me understand how you were able to grow those companies through channel sales. Just one. I mean, we don't have to go through all of them, but what that system or that process is for you.
Yeah. So advertising is a great example, and you're kind of in that space, so it's a good example. This is maybe before you were born, I doubt it, but maybe it was like Facebook was just coming out and Google was just coming. Instagram and all the social media platforms were just coming out with advertising models. And so we were building a contest and sweepstakes platform for brands to get a database of potential customers on social media. How do you get that? Well, content like a Bed Bath & Beyond could throw design the best wedding or something like that, right? Now you have people competing with content that is actually disseminating your own content. And then you've got an automatic list, and their followers are helping to support their content. So now you've got a whole bunch of people who are interested in the right demographic, interested in weddings and potential customer, right? Mm-hmm. So actually it's Crate and Barrel. But the key point is you can do that by knocking on Crate and Barrel's door and Bed Bath & Beyond's door and all that. Or you can go to the agency that represents those companies and give them the platform. And now instead of selling to one customer at a time, you're selling to one customer that can sell to 20 or 50 or 100 customers. And now you're enabling them to be a much more powerful and thought-leading agency in a new media that their clients might not understand. So it's a win-win-win. You get much more sales and all of that.
Absolutely. I mean, it just kind of goes back to the heart of sales, which is value, right? You're able to showcase that value to somebody who already has the ear of somebody who wouldn't hear it in, some sort of spam LinkedIn outreach or
That's right.
cold call, and maybe not even click an ad that they see. on social media. Now it's funny that you were talking about those contests, because I remember, I mean, I got my start in social media and for smaller brands, and there was not an easier way to grow a following way back then than giveaways, contests. And once the app started coming, it became so much more like fun and interactive. It used to just be like, but like and share this post. The tools became so much more enjoyable. It's weird to think of those days of social media now. It's almost like classic rock. You know, it's like old school. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, that was great. And then everything around, and like you start,
everything worked.
Yeah, it was a lot more exciting. It felt like it's
a lot less noisy.
Things I've noticed a lot about older millennials. You were being very nice about my age. I started in Facebook when you could only have one when you were in college, because that was
okay.
Yeah. And I just noticed with a lot of like my peers, documenting your life for 20 plus years is exhausting.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and there's especially people who are going down one road and presenting their life and dream one way, and then that didn't necessarily go the way they wanted it to.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, okay, well, I'm out.
New profile. Here we go.
Yeah. But you know, that's it's all part of life. And so anyway, speaking of life, how do you, what role or structure or what fun systems do you put into your personal life to get the most out of everything that you do?
That's a really good question. For me, it's being consistent about keeping health, working out every day, or a minimum 5 days a week. Just if you can't show up well as the leader of a company, then the rest of the company is going to suffer, right? So taking good care of yourself is very important. I meditate. I do some priming in the morning. So stuff like that gets me right.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more on gratitude health and working out. I mean, beyond just the stress relief that it can be. I've gone in waves of where I guess I joke I've been fat and I've been fit, and being fit is a heck of a lot more fun and rewarding. And I'm glad I have some of the experience on the other side, but I'm also, like everything else, you wish you did it a little bit earlier, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was also really sorry, interrupt there. Alison, go ahead.
No. I want to hear what you had to say, because I was going to change the subject to something not as fun. So
okay. So the other thing that's been really helpful is time management, and just really dedicating to the calendar itself and putting in the rocks before the pebbles, before the sand, making sure you get your priorities right and putting them into the calendar and keeping to that calendar is really important. And that calendar includes, it helps you line up which meetings you want to have sequentially. Like you cannot go from a one-on-one with one of your company employees and, get really empathetic and hearing their story and then go to something crazy else, right? So keeping things in segments of the day for where you're optimized for that energy level as well. So I'm mostly creative and writing in the morning. Midday, I'm kind of doing outbound stuff. And then towards the end of the day, I'm doing company time meetings. And that's kind of where my energy works best. That's what optimize.
I love that. I love how you break that down at the day setting, because I have like this one thing where it's like Friday afternoon is just like non-thinking work for me. Right. It's admin. It's whatever I have to do. It's check in. It's going to the weekend feeling like I have at least things under control. And so I never put off anything creative for that. But I like how you kind of self-diagnose where you feel like you're going to be strongest and then put the calendar around that. How protective are you of that? I mean, let's say there's a big opportunity, a big meeting, but it's kind of during your creative time. Do you cave and go, or do you go, no, I'm only available at this window for that sort of thing?
You start caving, it starts collapsing. That said, I mean, if it's a massive deal, of course, that's it. But no, you've got to really be disciplined. And so if someone says, "Hey, I can I schedule a meeting with you?" I've got those times blocked off where I am available. And a lot of people say, I do all my calls on Tuesdays. Well, really, are you really good at calls all day Tuesday? Or are you good at Tuesday? Or are you good at afternoons on Tuesday or mornings on Tuesday? So those are the kinds of things to work on. And when you say, which back to your point a second ago, now that the calendar's full and you know what you're doing, whatever you say yes to means you're saying no to something else. So it's really important to know what you're saying no to.
Yeah, evaluating that opportunity cost, right?
And one Friday a month. To your point, Austin, I really like what you do on Friday afternoons. I'll take one Friday a month, no computer, no social, no nothing. I'll spend at least 5 hours just pen and paper.
Oh,
yeah. It's
in that
painful.
Is that reflective time? Is that creative time?
It becomes creative time. It's painful to start sometimes. So I'll go do a workout, I'll go for a walk in the woods or something like that. But if you let your mind have that freedom, because, weekends you get busy, in your case, probably with kids and stuff, or, social, whatever it is. If you can dedicate one day a month just to think, man, you can think. And most time you don't have time to think.
Yeah. Wow. Now you got me thinking. I feel like I'd have to do it on a Tuesday. I feel like that would be the way to go. But then there's also the FOMO, where Friday makes a lot of sense, the creative side, because I do feel like emails slow down. Everyone's trying to catch up for the week. One thing I always am interested in with entrepreneurs is how you're able to structure in any continued learning, right? Everything is really reactive. So tell me about what your continued learning is, and any inspiring books or authors that you'd recommend.
Yeah, so continuous learning, I dedicate it, and even though I may be exhausted, I'll read a minimum of 10 pages a night.
Nice.
Going to bed. Generally, it's supposed to be 30 minutes, but I sometimes just crash. And then in terms of, I use a coach. I've got, and in terms of books, I can go all over the map of books, but going back to the time issue, Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time, phenomenal book.
Okay.
Which was a lot of the points I just described, actually. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
No, that's really neat. Okay, I'm going to get you out of here on a question, and it's going to be a very bizarre question. And I only asked you because I heard you talk about hockey earlier. Is that right?
Okay.
I was out with a friend, and we were talking about hockey because some news broke. We were in Arizona, and I guess their team is relocating. And I was like, gosh, I remember watching hockey a little bit as a kid, but what would get me to watch hockey? And so I created a new structure for hockey. I want to know if you're in or not.
Okay.
24 teams. I want 12 of them in Canada, 12 of them in the United States.
Okay.
Different divisions, the Stanley Cup every year, one Canadian team, one US team. I feel like you get both countries would be much more excited and be a much more thriving game. What are your thoughts on my idea of revitalizing?
I would love that to happen. In fact, that happened during COVID, right? Because the teams couldn't cross the border. And the Montreal Canadiens, my favorite team, made it into the finals and got blasted by the Florida Panthers.
Why are there two teams in Florida, by the way? I was born in
money.
Florida. Come on.
Yeah. First of all, we have the Canadian dollar is worth 30 cents or 70 cents to the US. So for Canadian teams to afford big time players on US paychecks, it's tougher. Smaller market. We have, 10% of your population. So we don't have enough people. And so those are the main reasons you got more American teams than Canadian, and a lot of them are South.
I feel like
I love the idea.
You get so many people more excited about it, though. There's a bit of patriotism that at some point might even get a little inappropriate. But
AFC, NFC, in the NFL, get the two, and away you go. I totally agree with the idea. Love it.
I appreciate you explaining why it can't happen. So it can just be a pipe dream. But I thought that'd be a fun way to go out. So Sean,
Most of the players in the U.S. teams are Canadian anyway.
oh my God, you guys have all the young kids, right? Like, and that's a big thing, like youth hockey, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, Ben. Well, I could ask you a lot more questions about that, but
Don't mess with a Canadian hockey mom. I tell you that much.
One of my favorite salespeople that I've ever met and I've worked with on multiple projects. She is a Canadian hockey mom, and I would never want to be the
coach that didn't play her kids.
her kid get hit on the ice.
Oh yeah, that could be another thing too. Yeah. Or the ref didn't call the penalty on that shot. Yeah.
All right, Sean, thanks so much, man. This is a lot of fun.
Austin, thank you very much. Have a great day.